This is the biggest Chery yet to be sold in Australia. It's a 7-seat model called the Tiggo 8 Pro Max, and it comes with a punchy engine. It comes with plenty of space on the inside, 7 seats as standard, and a few different grades to choose from. But should you buy this car, or should you check out some of the alternatives I'm going to tell you about shortly? Well, you'll figure it all out in this review. If you've already liked and subscribed, thanks very much. Let's get to it. There are 3 grades of the Chery Tiggo 8 Pro Max available in Australia at launch, and it starts at a pretty assertive price point for the entry-level version, and it comes with heaps of standard equipment for that amount of money as well. Things like 18-inch alloy wheels, LED lighting all around the car, and on the inside you get a pair of 12.3-inch screens. One is your touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and SatNav as well, and you've also got a digital driver info screen too. You got fake leather interior trim, and how's this? You get heated and cooled front seats in every single grade of this vehicle. There's also dual zone climate control and a bunch of other features on the inside as well. And if you step up just $2,000 to the mid-spec model, it's also front wheel drive like the base model, and it gets a few extra features over that base model, including a power tailgate and a built-in dash cam system, which is actually pretty handy, I reckon. And also in that mid-spec model, you get heated exterior mirrors and 3rd row air vents with a fan speed controller, plus a cargo blind, which you don't get in the base model. And at the top of the range is the ultimate all-wheel drive, which doesn't get anything really different about the interior. You might have thought that stepping up to the top spec model would get you full leather trim, but no, it's the same fake leather trim as the entry-level versions, but you can get it in brown if you wish. There's also the black option too. Plus, you do get a few extra features beyond that, including a panoramic sunroof and a fragrance system. So there's a few different fragrances that you can pick from to, well, make it smell a bit nicer on the inside. It's also got privacy glass on the top spec too. So it does add a few features that you might really like, but I've got some alternatives that you might want to consider as well. If you're on a strict budget when it comes to your 7-seater, well, there's one car that you might not have ever thought of before. It's called the Mahindra XUV700. It's an Indian-made 7-seater with heaps of technology and a really, really nice cabin finish as well. I rate that car just for the fact that it costs so little, and it really does stack up quite well in terms of the space and the usability of it as well. So it could be a great option for you if you are considering a 7-seater and you're on a very, very strict budget. But hey, if you can afford to spend a little bit more, then one of the mainstream rivals that you might want to consider is the Mitsubishi Outlander. It comes with the choice of a 7-seat model with a front wheel drive layout at around $40,000 starting price, plus on road costs. There are a few different variants of the Outlander 7-seater available as well, all the way up to like $65,000. So it might not necessarily suit everyone's budget at the top end, and you don't get as many features at the bottom end, but hey, you're getting a Mitsubishi, you're getting a 10-year conditional warranty, so it might stack up really well for your needs. And there's also the Nissan X-Trail with 7 seats and all-wheel drive starting at around $41,000 before on-road costs, and I think that stacks up really, really well if you are looking for a big name brand and you want that sort of lifestyle that comes with all-wheel drive as well. So that could be the really, really good alternative to this. If there's any that you think I've missed that are budget friendly and have 7 seats and have the option of all-wheel drive, let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you'd choose any of those or whether you'd go for this. It might be Chery's largest SUV, but it's not huge, this car. It's only about 4.7 meters in length, so about the same as what you find if you're looking at an Outlander or an X-Trail or something like that. Now this one is the high-grade version with the 19-inch alloy wheels, so it might look a little bit nicer than the entry-level ones, but I still think that it does stack up pretty well in terms of usability and space and design. I like the look of it. I'm not such a big fan of these badges on the back. There's too many badges for my liking. Tell me your thoughts. Now let's look in the boot and see what we're dealing with. Electric tailgate, because this is one of the high grade versions. And as you can see, with 3 rows of seats up, you do still have a fair amount of space to play with. It's more than 100 litres, which is better than some of the other vehicles out there. And you can fit some luggage in the back, school bags or whatever you need to. Look, the only real issue here is that you don't have a spot to store your cargo blind underneath the floor, like some other vehicles have a spot under the floor that you can fit it. So that's a little bit annoying. I'm just going to move that, just one sec. Righto, so I got rid of the cargo blind, it's out of the way. I'll show you folding these seats down is easy enough one-handed. Sorry about the shadows in this shot, but look, that is a pretty decent amount of space for a 5-seat family SUV, and you have bonus seats if you need them. All right, so also in the back, you've got some shopping bag hooks on the side there. You've got a light for the back, and you've also got a 12-volt and another shopping bag hook there. And underneath this section, there's an emergency triangle. You've also got some sound system stuff, I think, and a jack. And yes, that means that you do get a spare wheel in this car. Underneath, you'll find a space saver spare wheel across all grades. And I reckon that that does add some value for buyers who live in Australia, especially if you live in the country. The interior of the Tiggo 8 Pro, well, it's fairly similar to other models in the Chery range, and that's no bad thing because as soon as you sit in it, you feel like you're getting a pretty primo experience considering the amount of money that you're paying for this vehicle, right? So the finishes in this top spec model with the brown leatherish looking trim is actually pretty special, I reckon, for the money. And you know, brown might not be to everyone's taste, I understand that, but I think it looks better than the black version just because it adds some kind of extra flair to the cabin. Now there is plenty of other flair in the cabin, and if you've looked at any modern day Mercedes, you might be thinking, well, they're obviously inspired by Mercedes design language on the inside here, because you've got this fake wood trim that runs up on the dashboard. You've got these speaker finishes, which are very, very reminiscent of the Burmester system in Mercedes models. And look, I think that it's okay to be inspired by brands like Mercedes when it comes to interior design, because it's got some wow factor, that's for sure. All right, so you've got a pair of 12.3-inch screens across the entire range. The touchscreen media system is relatively easy to get your head around, although you do have to use some controls through the screen, which you might wish were actual physical buttons. There is a bar down below for your climate control settings, including a fan speed controller, temperature control as well. But it's just a bit strange, some of the interactions that you have with this system. If it's not set on sync for the air conditioning, for instance, then you'll just be adjusting the temperature for one side of the car, not the other. Then you'll have to do some on the screen and some down here. There's little things like that, which maybe aren't as ideal as they could be. But look, I connected up to Apple CarPlay yesterday wirelessly, and everything worked pretty fine. I didn't really have any issues with that. And there's a sat-nav system built in as well if you want to use that too. You've got a 12.3-inch screen in front of the driver as well, with a fair amount of information there. At times it can be a little bit, well, overactive in terms of what's showing up on the screen. If you've got it set so it's showing up the map on the screen and it loses map connection, it sort of shrinks and expands the dials on the screen. So it's maybe not perfect, but I do think that it does add some wow factor. Now, on top of the steering wheel here, you'll also find a little camera that watches your eyes. That's the driver monitoring camera system. So it's designed to keep an eye on you and make sure that you're not getting fatigued. At times, it's a little bit overzealous in telling you that you're distracted when you might not actually be distracted. And I find that, like, if you're playing on the screen or doing something on the screen, I should say, then it might tell you that you're distracted when you actually don't feel distracted. So I don't know, I just don't like being nannied. Maybe that's just me. Some of the controls that you might want to switch off when it comes to the lane keeping and that sort of stuff, you have to go through that central screen as well. Now, storage, well, you've got a wireless phone charger down here. You've got a pair of cup holders. Here is where you'll find your controls for some elements of the car, your drive modes, your gear selector. It's an annoying gear selector. It's like some of the other models in this range. So it's got a button on the side that, well, if you press the button, you're in manual mode, and you might not actually want to be in manual mode. It's just a shift up or shift down to go reverse or drive. Talk more about that in the driving section. Drive mode selector here as well. You've got a volume dial down here because there's no buttons up on the screen. And below this section, there's a big storage, I guess you'd call it a nook, where you could put a bunch of things like a handbag, wallets, phones, whatever it may be. And in here, you've also got a big covered center console bin. There's bottle holders in the doors, and this one is the top spec model, so it gets the big panoramic glass sunroof, which you can open if you wish. I don't really dig sunroofs personally, but you might be in love with them. That's totally cool. Now, one thing that I just want to point out before I get into the back seat is this rear vision mirror is terrible. It has this sort of convex look to it. You can't really actually see out the back window at all. It's very, very bad. In fact, in the Chery Emotive 5, you can watch my review of that by hitting the link in the description, they fixed that with the updated GT version. So hopefully they fix this one too, because it's not good. All right, let's jump in the back seat or second row seat and see what it's like. All right, so back seat space. This seat is set for my driving position. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot. I've got enough knee room, enough foot room, and enough headroom to be pretty comfortable, I have to say. And if you've got people in the back row, well, you can slide this seat forward. You can also slide this seat forward if you need to, so you can give them a bit more space and maybe squish up whoever's in this middle section. But look, I think that this space is actually not too bad. It's quite narrow. You're not going to fit 3 adults across here comfortably, I wouldn't think, but thankfully there is not much in the way of a transmission tunnel intrusion, so you sort of got a bit of foot room to play with if you do need to use it with 3 across. Now, thankfully there's also some really good amenities back here. You've got directional air vents, although I'm really not fond of this little scripted Tiggo insignia on top of that section there. You've got USB-C and A ports there, a little storage tray. You've also got some map pockets, and you've also got these little trigger switches here on the side of this front seat. So if you maybe are driving a rideshare vehicle, you can move it forward so you can make that person have a bit more room. It's nice to see. So kid stuff, ISOFIX points in the window seats. You've also got 3 top tethers as well. There's bottle holders in the doors. There's a flip down armrest with cup holders here. And yes, there's also a 3rd row of seats. So I'm going to get back there and show you what it's like. Righto, so this is the portion of the seat that's easier to fold and slide forward. So there's a little pull tab up here. You pull that and then the seat slides forward. But as you can see, the headrest hits on the headrest of the driver's seat ahead. And what that means is, well, it's not going to be ideal, because if you have to move the driver's seat forward every single time you want to get someone into the 3rd row, it could get really old really fast. All right, so I'm just going to tuck this seatbelt in so I don't trip over it getting in and see if I can get in. Remember, I'm not a small human. So here we are in the back. I'll fold this seat forward so you can see. So I've positioned this seat so that I could basically fit in front of myself very squishily, but in the back row, look, these are bonus seats is my suggestion. My knees are hard up against this seat ahead. My feet are tucked right in underneath, and headroom, well, it's a bit limited. But if you've got younger kids and you just need to get somewhere, maybe you do the soccer run or whatever it may be, it could be perfectly fine for your needs. But I wouldn't go thinking that you're getting Kia Carnival levels of space in the 3rd row. So just keep that in mind. Now, like I said, in certain specs, you do get vents in the back and a fan controller as well, which is good to see, but it should be standard across the entire range. If you are going to use this as a 7-seater, it might disappoint you if you buy the base model and you don't get those features. But there are some cup holders back here. No child seat anchor points in this 3rd row though. So yeah, sometimes 7-seater, I would say. Now, in the world of Tiggo land, Pro Max is the nomenclature that they use for the 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine. So it's the punchy one. You'll see the outputs on your screen now. That's a fair bit of grunt for an SUV of this size. Now, it comes as standard with a 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. I'm going to tell you what I don't like about that in the driving section soon, but there's the choice of front wheel drive or all-wheel drive in the top spec version. Now, this is the first Chery model in Australia to come with a towing rating, which is good. 750 kilos for unbraked trailers and 1,300 kilos for a brake trailer, but just keep in mind your tow ball down weight is limited to 75 kilos. So don't go thinking that you're going to tow the big caravan around Australia with this one. All right, let's go for a drive. So what's it like to drive? Well, I will say that this turbo engine has heaps of grunt, and it is a really zesty thing. I mean, probably more torque and power than you really need in a vehicle like this, but that does mean that you do have effortlessness on your side, and I guess that is something that people want when they're buying a 7-seater. You don't have to have the car revving its ring off to get you going and keep you going if you do have people on board. So it does seem to stack up fairly well from the engine perspective. The transmission could be better. It is a little bit finicky at lower speeds especially, and maybe the gearing logic isn't perfect, but I still think that it stacks up okay from an engine and transmission perspective. It's just at lower speeds that you have to get used to the way the car wants to be driven, and it does take a little bit of learning. The all-wheel drive model is, well, it's heavier and it's got the slightly bigger wheels with lower profile tires, so you do feel more of the road surface coming into the cabin, and it's maybe not as likable in terms of ride comfort compared to the entry-level versions, but look, if you do need all-wheel drive, if you maybe go to the snow or you spend a lot of time camping or whatever, you might appreciate the extra traction that you do get when you do have that all-wheel drive system. And look, the tires on the entry-level versions, that's something I would upgrade straight away if I was buying one, because they're not terrific. They're slightly better tires on the high spec, but even so, you could spend, you know, $1,000 extra and get a really decent set of tires, which might improve the drive experience dramatically. All right, so the steering is actually one of the things that's let down by the tires. I think that the steering really lacks any sort of meaningful feel to the driver's hands. And look, you might not care about how it steers. You might just be worried about whether it'll get around a corner comfortably enough or deal with roundabouts well enough. And it will, but it's just not fun in any particular way. So if you are looking for a fun SUV, there are other options out there that you might want to check out. And look, the refinement levels, I'm actually pretty impressed. It's not too noisy on the inside, and there's not too much road noise intrusion or anything like that. So it does seem to stack up pretty well from that perspective. And also the braking performance is pretty good. It does have a fairly bitey brake pedal too. All right, let's talk about fuel consumption then. Well, the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the front wheel drive models is on your screen now, and that is a little bit better than the official number for the all-wheel drive models. And I drove both on this launch drive, and I'm going to show you the numbers that I saw on your screen now for each version, and that was across a mix of different driving scenarios: open road, a bit of enthusiastic driving, some urban driving like I'm doing now. And yeah, I think that that is okay, but certainly not setting any benchmarks in terms of the amount of fuel that you will consume in this car. And remember, it needs 95 RON premium unleaded, but look, I think that for most people it'll be fine. And look, fine is a great summary for this car in terms of the drive experience. I don't think it's great, but hey, if you don't care about the drive, it could be perfectly fine for you. I'm filming this in May 2024, and at this point in time there is no safety rating for this vehicle, but it's going through the process at the moment. So it does seem to have everything that it would need to achieve a maximum 5-star ANCAP rating. Things like autonomous emergency braking, there's lane keeping assistance with emergency lane keeping, which might be a little bit too insistent for your liking, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. You've also got a surround view camera as standard across the range, front and rear parking sensors, and 10 airbags, which is a lot for a car like this. But crucially, if you are considering using this car as a full-time 7-seater, those airbags don't extend to the third row, so it might not necessarily be perfect for every application. But if you're just using them as bonus seats, maybe it'll be fine. Chery Australia offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty for its models, which is pretty good. And there's also a 7-year capped price servicing plan too. Now, intervals are every 12 months and 15,000 kilometres, and you'll see the average service pricing on your screen now. I think that's pretty good. Plus, if you do service your car with the Chery network, well, you get 7 years of roadside assistance as well. Seems to stack up pretty good. So there you have it, the Chery Tiggo 8 Pro Max. It's a mouthful of a nameplate, but it's a very impressive value for money SUV. If you need 7 seats and you like the look of it, tell me if you'd buy it. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It does help a lot. And ring the bell to keep up to date with all of my reviews. Plenty more coming. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.